So, as you probably saw from the marketing out there about this event, this training session, was that I think quite a lot of people get a bit worried about that word advisor. We're all told that AI is going to take a whole chunk of our jobs as accountants, and we're going to have to become advisors. We're going to have to show people a bit more value in what we do, not just the numbers. And um, that's exciting actually, because as much as myself as an accountant. Oh, and I just remembered, for those of you that don't know me, I am Emma, and I work for AVN. I'm one of the practice growth experts. So I do apologize. I'm so busy chatting to everybody on the chat box. I hadn't mentioned that to those people who don't know me. So I have a lot of experience as an accountant offering advisory services because I did that while I was an accountant, but also working with a lot of other accountants, AVN accountants, to help them make that move from accountant to advisor. Um, and because it's such encompasses so much, the word advisor, I think perhaps it's important, as I put here, that what you do is you decide how you're going to do it. You do it your way, the way that you are going to feel the most comfortable delivering it, and you're going to give the most value to your clients. And that's the important thing. So what I want to do today is just have a little bit of a thought process, really, about what advisory is and what it could mean for you. And then how do we actually talk to people about it? How do we make it comfortable for ourselves to talk about it? And also, how do we make it so that our clients actually change their perception of us from accountant to advisor? So that's my goal for today. Any questions, please let me know. Okay. So just going back to really, what do we do now? So the basic premise of being an accountant, isn't it, is to produce numbers. It's to produce the numbers that are needed in order for people to comply with the law initially, by doing their VAT, doing their accounts, doing their tax returns, compliance. But I think we do lots of other things already. So currently, obviously, basics. I wouldn't say basic. Sorry, that's the wrong word. But work that we're expected to deliver: accounts, management accounts, tax returns. You know, we do planning as far as tax planning and inheritance tax planning and remuneration planning already. And again, a lot of our clients expect that as part of what we deliver. But we also do a lot of business support now. We know we do a lot of payroll, bookkeeping, VAT. We've actually always done that, but it has varied, hasn't it, over the years, how much business owners have wanted us to do that. It seems to be becoming more and more that they want us to be taking on the responsibility for bookkeeping and payroll and VAT, which is great because we can use technology and we can use AI to help us be more efficient in that. Oh, excuse me. We've also always done cash flow and profit forecasts, haven't we? I'm not saying we all love to do those because in my experience, it's been very hard to find software that's sort of done it the way that I've been wanting it to be done. And probably, as most accountants, we've ended up going back to Excel, and that ends up being a big job. And although we've charged for it, maybe that hasn't always covered the amount of work we've had to put in. And we've also always probably done things like company formations, being the registered office, company secretarial, and offered the professional fee protection. So these are things that we've sort of a given really about what we expect or what we think business owners expect from their accountant. And so that they're the sort of things that we have to be aware of that we need to deliver. And they are almost as seen as our basic package of what we do. Now, the challenge is obviously that we can actually make a difference to these numbers, and we maybe probably don't as much as we could because we don't give ourselves the time to do that work. And that goes back to the fact that perhaps we're not charging enough in order to give us the time to do that work. We only have a limited amount of time, obviously, and we need to focus on what we're going to give as far as added value. So for me, what the first step in advisory really for us is actually explaining those numbers and adding the value, because as for most business owners, they didn't go into business to deal with numbers. Okay. They started their business because they were great at what they did. Okay. Maybe that they were a plumber, maybe that they were a carpenter, maybe that they wanted a business of their own, setting something up. And actually, numbers are one of those annoying things that they have to have, as opposed to something that's of value to them. So where we can start being great advisors is to actually add value by explaining those numbers. So for example, on basic stuff like accounts, management accounts, we as accountants will always look at key ratios and probably at trends and changes just because we are checking the validity of what we're doing. But actually explaining what those ratios are, what they mean, what are the effects of changing those numbers. So, we may talk about gross profit percentage, but actually talking about the fact that maybe their direct costs have gone up and they've not passed that cost on through their sales figures, so they're losing the profit on those sales. That's a good conversation to have. So by just starting by adding value by explaining those numbers could be really useful. When it comes to tax, we probably are not explaining that when we're doing a tax return, we are actually doing a huge amount of work because of the complexity that tax is, and it changes all the time. So it's not like it's, something that they could just learn by Googling it, frankly. As much as software says, oh, yes, press a button and you'll get your VAT and you'll get your tax and whatever, that's not the truth, is it? In reality, people are more complex and their situation is more complex. So we do a lot of work about that. And so explaining that, explaining what we're doing, maybe how much money we've managed to save them by the planning that we've done, not only now, but future, because often what we do now can have a knock-on effect for many years to come. Things like inheritance tax planning, just talking to them about the security for them as maybe people who are inheriting from their parents, but also the security and the protection for their children as they hand money or property down, whatever. So there's a lot of planning there. And obviously remuneration planning, just explaining to people the best ways to take money out of a business. Again, that's something maybe people are not aware of. They just take money out without actually understanding how taking that money out of the business is affecting perhaps the future survival of the business. I've talked to lots of businesses where, their clients are just taking out too much money and they're putting the whole business at risk, but they don't understand that. So again, having those conversations. When we look at the payroll and bookkeeping and VAT, we have so much options to help people in those things because we're looking at key data about that business. So, we can help people not only through the payroll, sort out things like pensions and benefits and stuff like that, but also helping people with some of their retention for their team. Because again, we all know that in virtually every business that's out there at the moment, recruitment is a big challenge. So helping people think about what other benefits could they put through that would support keeping team members. Bookkeeping, we look at that information. And by doing it for them, we are adding value by saving the client time, but also giving them real-time reporting on the numbers. So, all of these things we're already adding. I've not completed because I know you can explain the benefits of cash flow and all these other things that I'm just giving you some examples. But importantly, really, there's a lot of advice you're already giving that's invisible. Okay. And part of your job now is to actually show people, to shine a light, to use your magnifying glass to explain to people the advice you're giving and the value you already deliver, because so much of it is hidden. And as accountants, it's very hard for us sometimes to think of things as being added value because we always do them. So those things that I talked about, some of those things you probably always do, but that doesn't mean they're not of massive value. And that's giving people advice about how they can change their business, how they can evolve their business and probably affect their lives. So really, really important, I think, that what you try and do is start thinking about how can you make things more visible? And here are some ideas of things that we probably already do, but maybe we don't explain to our clients. And these are advisory things. So often we get clients who ask us about buying or selling property or other assets, and these tend to be those phone calls. Oh, I was just thinking of doing this. What do you think? you know, and it comes across as a 2-second question and answer, but it's not, is it? None of this stuff is simple. You know, there is a lot of consequences to everything that these people want to do, and that's advice. And so we need to position that as advice and therefore of value. And therefore, it's not a 2-second answer, this. Even if in your head you think, oh, yeah, my answer would be yes or no. How did you get to that answer? You got to that answer through a huge amount of knowledge and calculations and other things going on in your head, you know, that you've thought about in order to, because of what you know about that client. And that's of value. So again, we need to think about how we position that as being advising somebody on something and therefore getting paid as an advisor for that. Obviously, lots of people talk about finance and borrowing. It's important, isn't it, to think about how are we helping people with that? It's important as well to help people think about whether they need to borrow or what is the best way to borrow money. You know, again, sometimes our clients want to rush in to buy new assets or to do new things without actually thinking about what is the return on that investment going to be. Again, that's advice we can give people. Or maybe it's about business expansion. Maybe it's about either launching a new product or, you know, setting up a business. Well, we would help people with a lot of this stuff about setting up a business, buying a business, setting up a limited company, you know, moving into a limited company. We always talk about all that and the tax implications, and we deal with all the paperwork and all the information around having a limited company. And that is advice, as much as we probably don't think of that as advice because we go, well, that's what we do. But actually, that's to think about that. Often we may be giving people advice when they say, oh, I've got no money, my cash flow's rubbish, or you know, I'm paying too much tax. And we're often giving them advice about how they could change those, you know, by the way that they do things. Maybe again, it's about around the payroll. It's about actually thinking about how can they make additional payments to people? Can they appoint a new director? Employing a family member? All of this stuff, taking on a subcontractor, profit sharing scheme, sorry, all those sorts of things we get advice asked about. And these are really key things. And you're right, Fozia, some people expect that this is part and parcel of the service. Why do they expect that? Have you told them that that's part of what you deliver? You know, I think it's important that what we do is we define what is included in our standard accounts information and what's actually above and beyond that, because these are unusual things. It may be that they expect us to deal with it, and we are the right people to deal with it, but they shouldn't expect to get it for free. You know, they need to understand what is included in what they're paying for now and what is on top. So I think that's about having that conversation and having real clarity when you do your letter of engagement of important things about what is and isn't included. Other things we always talk about, again, that car thing comes up all the time, doesn't it? You know, so wanting advice on that, again, it's not always a simple answer. And then they go, oh, well, I've heard down the pub that if I buy this, then I will, that's really good for my tax. Well, it might be for that person in the pub, but it might not be for them. Again, we do, and often this is something we often do charge for, is about changing business structure. And that's some really important advice for some people because that can make a massive difference to their futures. And sometimes, again, we help people think about retiring or selling part of their business. And again, we would expect to be charged for that because we are doing something out of the ordinary. Okay. And that's, like I said, you need to define what is the ordinary and what isn't in reality, not what they're, and also not to assume that they think that's the norm. Okay. So I think you need to have this conversation with your clients, but a lot of this stuff is advisory stuff. We also add a lot of value just by the fact that we manage that correspondence with tax authorities. You know, that we keep an eye on the fact that they may be nearing the VAT threshold and we give them advice about how to deal with that. We may find a better VAT scheme for them. All of that, yes, sometimes people assume that's what we're going to do. I don't know, do they? Have you put in your letter? We will always keep an eye out and see whether or not you're hitting the VAT threshold. If you have, that's part of it. If you haven't, no, that's actually something you can say. I've been looking at your management accounts, whatever, and I can see that within the next few months, you're going to exceed the VAT threshold. And then we need, so our fee for helping you deal with that and create the right VAT scheme and set everything up is this. So things like that. And again, we've got other things here, more important, other business issues. So there's lots of things that we probably are already doing that are advisory, in that we are advising our clients and they are listening to our advice and they are taking action based on some of that advice, that we ought to get paid for. So I think that's almost like already a step you could be at. You just need to define what is included in your standard accounts package and what is actually advisory. So that could be that could be the first step. That could be what you choose to be advisory, which is stuff that actually is already you're feeling really comfortable with. To me, the next step in advisory is actually understanding the owner's goals. Okay, we can talk about numbers in relation to the business only in as far as we understand that business's situation. But ultimately, that business is there to deliver something for the owner. Okay, they started their business with something in mind, whether that was information, if they wanted freedom, whether they wanted long-term plans, whether they got a financial goal, whether they got a personal goal to be able to take so much money out, pay for a mortgage, whatever else it is, buy their Porsche, whatever it is, we need to understand those owners' goals. Because one of the problems with advisory just based around the numbers is that it's very difficult for the business owner to connect those numbers to something that's personal, that's of value, that's of importance to them. We can, unless there is obviously something that connects to a goal, whether that is a financial or a business or a personal goal. Okay, so if I say to somebody, I'm going to look at how best I can take money out of the business for you to save you tax, that's a personal, that affects them personally. It could be a personal goal. Okay, because I want to take more money out of the business. How do I do that most tax efficiently? Okay, I may have a personal goal that is to pay off my mortgage in 10 years' time. If I know that as their accountant, then I know that they need to be taking that money out of the business to pay that mortgage. If that's the case, then the business needs to be making at least that extra profit in order for them to take it out of the business. So we'll just step back, don't we? And if they're going to have to make that extra profit, how can we help them look at what they're doing as far as sales, gross profit percentage, net profit percentage, costs, all those things right back to our numbers that we're happy with. But for the business owner, what they see is you're helping me pay off my mortgage. And when you tell them they need to be looking at their prices, or they need to be looking at their costs, or they may need to be, they understand that that the reason they need to do these things is because the outcome is to pay their mortgage off. So importantly, understanding the owner's goals is quite critical. And I know that sometimes this can be quite challenging for some of us, and for some of our clients, you couldn't go in and go, tell me then, what's your goals? Because that's not the relationship we have. But there are some very simple questions that we can ask them, that will help us identify what the owner's goals are. So coming up with a series of very easy questions, simple things like that. In that example, do you have any long-term loans or mortgages that you want to pay off because you're worried about it? Or how soon do you want to pay them off? How are you going to finance paying that off? Sometimes it's really interesting, isn't it? If you see those mortgage calculators and it tells you how much interest you'd save if you paid things off early. That's a great way to say, okay, if I help you pay that off in 10 years, you'll have saved this much money in interest. Can you see the value there? So having that conversation is really important. Also looking at short-term versus long-term goals. You know, sometimes the goal is just to be able to have enough money in the bank to pay the wages. If that's a goal, let's work out how we do that with them, okay? It may be that they go, okay, in 3 months' time, I need to buy a piece of machinery and I need to have this stuff in place. It may be that they've got a long-term goal and ultimately retirement. So understanding that is really, really quite critical, because unless you can get that, and unless you can and connect the advice you're going to give around the numbers to those goals, they will not value it. So that when you start saying, okay, I want to give you some, I want to support you with the growth of your business, and that will cost you £3,000, okay? Rather than going £3,000, when they see that actually you're going to save them, I don't know, £120,000 in interest on their mortgage, what does that mean? I mean, that just doesn't, it's not, you know, why worry about that? That's, they can see the value of your advice. So helping them to make that connection is really important. Now, I know, like I said, sometimes that can be quite a challenge for some people, but most people, if you just sit down and just ask them to talk about what's going on in their business, you'll get that short-term goal. You'll get maybe the immediate personal goals of what they need, and then you can start extending that long-term. Importantly, for you, you need to define the measures with them, okay? And that, again, we're back to numbers, aren't we? But you know what? If somebody's got a goal, we need to work out what is the measure of that and help us to connect to that measure. And in my experience, people connect in one or two or three of these three different ways. First of all, is it going to save me time? Time is so precious. Is it going to allow me to do something else with my time? Because that's so important too, isn't it? If I can say, okay, when we do your bookkeeping, it's going to save you 4 hours a week. What could you do with that 4 hours? And maybe that 4 hours investing in the growth of the business. It may be 4 hours to go and play golf. I don't care. That's the business owner's goal. Okay. But time is so important to people. The middle one, money, obviously. Are we saving them money, or are we going to help them earn money? Ultimately, that money is there to help deliver on one of their goals, isn't it? You know, we need money to achieve what we want in some form. And so how are we going to help them with that? And sometimes it's just not having the worry about money. That could be a thing, just being in a safe place because there is money put aside. And the last one is stress. Okay. As all business owners, every business owner I meet is stressed about something. If we can do something that removes that stress, because that stress affects their physical health as well as their mental health, if we can do something that connects to that too, we can give them the value of what we're doing. We can show them the value. So again, that bookkeeping, I'm going to save you 4 hours a week. You can do what you like with. So what's the sort of, how stressful do you get when you do bookkeeping? Does it really annoy you? Or do you get frustrated with the software? You know, do you get annoyed that you have to keep finding the receipts? All those sort of things. Does it stop you doing something else? You can define those measures. And those measures allow you to keep coming back to them as you're doing work with them, as you're advising them and saying, okay, look, I'm going to give you this advice. I'm going to help you with this, and it's going to save you time, earn or save you money, release your stress. And they can then evaluate that. They can make that connection between the value and the advice you're giving. And that's quite critical. Fourthly, you need to record and report on those measures. Okay, it's all right, somebody coming out with a goal and you say, and maybe it is that pay off the mortgage in 10 years. Okay, what do we need to do in year 1? as a start. That might not pay off 1/10 of the mortgage, but let's start small. What do we need to do in year 2? What do we need to do in 3? Or what do we need to do in month 1? And are we moving the right way? And then this is a really great way of proving that your advice is helping them, particularly if part of your advice is to encourage them to take action. So maybe one of the things we can do is suggest that we used to call it nagging rights, the opportunity to say to a client, right, you invested in my time and my advice. You went away with some actions of things you to do. Can you give me the rights to chase you up on that? And one of the ways I'm going to chase you up is I'm going to ask you for this information that goes on this report each month. And then they continue to see the value of that advisory work because they're seeing the changes in the numbers. And that's the other important thing, isn't it? We are now being able to then identify the improvements. We can look at the ways that we can show them what can do better because they can physically see the changes that are happening because of the advice. And so we are often giving people that. We are often looking at stuff, and we are problem solvers. We have minds that are problem solvers. I speak to a lot of accountants and I say, what do you love to do? And they say, we love to solve puzzles. I love to get a really challenging thing and find a solution that makes my client happy. And we can identify those key improvements for a business based on the numbers, based on the information in front of us, based on the fact that now, because of all the software that we use and we're getting real-time information, we can help people make improvements every day if they want. I'm not saying they want to, but, you know, at least monthly. And that allows you, again, to offer perhaps a monthly session as a monthly advisory session with your client, where actually all you're doing is looking at those reports and identifying improvements and helping your client come up with an action plan. It's not about you doing, it's about them doing, but you helping them to identify it. Because when you are stuck in the middle of a challenge, it's that old phrase, you can't see the wood for the trees. Sometimes you cannot see the obvious thing. And this is where, again, your value is actually being an outsider to the business. Your value is to be able to look in without all the emotion and all the stress and all the history and the emotional connection, because it's your baby as a business, and not having any of that, and being able to look at those numbers objectively, look at the business objectively, look at what the business owner is doing objectively, and be honest with them and say, this isn't working. This needs to change, or this is working. Well done. How did you make that happen? What else could you do like this? That being the numerate outsider, as we call it, helps you identify, without that emotion, without that connection, where we can improve. And that means that then they can change the numbers. They can make sure that things happen. The reason why I've put this picture up here, because obviously this is the money, you know, this is time and energy and stress. This is all those same things I talked about. But as you can see, there is usually things can get slightly worse before they get better, just so that people are aware. And it's something you need to be, again, aware when you're advising clients that at the beginning, okay, they will possibly make less money for a while because they've got your costs involved, okay? And because they're investing in their business as opposed to going out there and making sales. They may have to spend more time and effort working on their business, taking those actions that have come out of the advice that mean that maybe they're not chasing the money, and it might be a little bit stressful. But if you can explain to them that this is for a finite period and you can set that goal with them, it's very easy that they start seeing the benefits. We call that bit the loser trap. There is a point, there's a section of time where people get very worried because actually when we're advising somebody and we're telling them they need to change things in their business, even just based on the numbers that we're saying, okay, you need to think about negotiating with your suppliers, or you need to think about talking to your customers about paying you earlier, or that can be very stressful. That can be more stress, can't it? You know, there could be time where you're going to have to say to your client, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go and get this money off a client when I know you want to be on the shop floor selling, but you need to actually get the money in because cash flow is the issue. Okay, there could be issue, you know, there is going to be a time where it's going to be hard, and at that point they may think this is just too hard, let's just stop. And that's called the loser trap, because at that point they're normally just on the cusp of changing things and things getting better. And that's why measuring those numbers, recording them and showing them, actually they start seeing that happening, and that proves your value as an advisor. So I think actually thinking about how you can explain that to your client and position that as a change is a great way of showing that advice. Ultimately, if you are helping a client and you are really into doing advisory work, you know, and you want to do a bit more than helping them not just to change the numbers, to make to be whatever they want them to be, and that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? It's whatever the numbers they want them to be. But we may also want to be helping them deliver their dream for the future. So that could be making sure that that business is sustainable. I put sustainability because there's two parts of that, isn't there? There's sustainability as far as the environment and our planet, but also the sustainability as far as, you know, creating a business that actually continues to work, that gives the business owner freedom and choice. So actually helping them prepare for that, helping them see where they need to focus their attentions, making sure that they get a guaranteed personal income. So maybe it's helping them plan a business that, you know, they ensure they get a guaranteed income out of it, even if they're not there. It still earns them money, you know. Talk to a lot of accountants, and this is what they want to do. They don't actually want to sell their business, their accountancy practice. They've got no plan for retirement. What they want to do is have choice so that they can work whatever hours they want, but they get the same personal income because the business continues to run. And it's the same with every business owner. It would be really nice to know that at some point you could stop working really hard and actually just enjoy the fruits of your labor, as they say, and get a guaranteed personal income. Or it may be exit planning. Maybe they think, I want to sell this business. Or maybe they want to hand it on to their children. How can we help them make that business sustainable and valuable enough to hand to their children? Not to give their children a business that's falling apart at the seams, but actually to give them a business that's ready for their children to come and expand. Getting to that stage, that's when we start doing more about consultancy. We start actually thinking about, okay, how can we really help getting in that business and giving them some structure? I'm not expecting people to go straight to that, okay? None of us are really ready for that to begin with. What I want you to do is think about where you want to be on that level, okay? And it's a step by step. Maybe actually what you want to do is think about, what can we deliver now? What can we package in what we deliver now as advisory? And start making it very clear to our clients what is and isn't included in the fees that we charge now. Okay? And the value of what we deliver, making that value really obvious to people so that they can see that. And actually, how do we want to deliver advisory in the future? Because we want, just as we want to create a plan for development, maybe for our clients through our advisory work, we want to do that for ourselves too. We want to think about how can we move that forward. So the question that most people say is, well, how do I position myself as an advisor when all they've ever seen is as an accountant? Okay. And I think this is important to have these sort of conversations. There are several different ways to do it. Okay. So I want you to think about how the world sees you and your business. So what does your website look like? Does your website talk about compliance work? Does it talk about we're great at saving you tax? We're great at bookkeeping. We can do your payroll. Or does it talk about we're here to help you grow your business? We're here to take away the stresses and strains, the financial, of the financial arm of your business. How do you position yourself out there? So if nothing else, think about how you want the world to see you. I'm not saying spend a fortune on your website. I'm just saying think about the language that you're using on your website. Make sure you think about what it is that you are doing that makes a difference and that explains to your clients, and prospects what you're doing. So if I think about that in other ways, also what, when you're sending stuff to your clients, what are you sending them? Are you just sending them the latest tax rates? Are you sending them those lovely newsletters that say, oh yes, the Chancellor said, here we go, and it's all technical? Or are you sending them things that say, are you worried about cash flow? Is that something that keeps you awake at night? We've got lots of ideas of how we can help you with cash flow. Why not come and talk to us? Just going back to simple things that we can talk about, can't we? How do people collect their debts? Cash flow forecasts, things like that. All those numbers that we can get. There's a lot of things we can do just by the communications that we send out to our existing clients that will change the positioning. And often I think it's laziness that we just stick by using these technical newsletters that we can get. You can buy them and they get just sent out for you with your logo on it. That's lazy. Okay. It doesn't help our clients. Most of them don't even read them. We want short little things, maybe some short little videos just explaining some basic things that just position you differently as an advisor. Some of our members have been doing some fantastic little videos that they have like YouTube channels. One of them has just a phenomenal amount of views on his, and all he's talking about are basic things like the benefits of taking money out of your business different ways, about chasing your debtors, about looking at your gross profit percentage and why it's important. Some of those things that, like I said, to me, they are just level 2 advisory. But actually, he's seen as an advisor. And that's the key, positioning yourself. I think also when you are talking to your team, yeah, Fiona, who's that kind of, yeah, 𝐬𝐿 Associates. If you look at Dan 𝐬𝐿, he has a great YouTube channel, 𝐬𝐿 Associates. He does these amazing short videos that has thousands upon thousands of views. I think his top one had something like 63,000 views. Can you believe it? Absolutely insane. But that's great, isn't it? Dan 𝐬𝐿, Emily, that's his name, Dan 𝐬𝐿. He is great. But then there are, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go all that to all of that. It's just about how, again, you talk and your team talk. And this is my next step, really, is about explaining to your team the value of what they deliver to is quite critical. Really important that they understand that they are not just doing bookkeeping. They are actually helping a client. They are saving them time. They are making sure that that information is correct. They are preventing that client from getting caught by HMRC for VAT issues because you already know what you're doing. They're making sure that perhaps the VAT's done in a timely manner so they don't get penalties. They're doing all these things that are to help the client, and they are valuable. And that they have an opportunity too to spot ways of advising the client, because if they are doing their bookkeeping and they spot something unusual, then they can be making a comment about it. Hi, John. I noticed you got some new finance. Can you tell me what that was for? Oh, right, okay. So you've bought a new car. Did you talk to us about what was the best way of doing that? Well, it's interesting because if you had, we might have been able to save you some tax. Or maybe they spot something else. I don't know, that's something unusual. Like this month, I see that your motor expenses are twice the normal amount. What's been going on? Have you thought, are you getting, have you checked that? Maybe you should go by train. Those sorts of things. There are lots of little tiny things. They don't have to be massive. Okay. But that allows your team to start giving advice. It allows your team to start feeling that they are making a difference and they see themselves as being more than just processors. They see themselves as being people who are making a difference and helping their clients and advisory. And those little tiny extra added value things are what keeps your client and keeps your client paying you. So to me, I think you need to start creating a training plan, first for yourself, which looks at how do you look at what stage, where do you want to be? What do you want to deliver advisory wise? Also looking at your team. Who could be great at talking to clients? Those people who get on really well with clients, who love talking. Those people who just love to sit in the back office and get their head down. They're great too, but they're not going to give advice. Okay. Find the team that like talking to people, who are interested in investigating the numbers, who that you can train to spot these changes, to start being part of the delivery of advisory. So again, it's not just down to you. That's the really important thing. Above all, you need to remember that you have far more knowledge than virtually every other business owner you meet about the numbers and what they mean and how changing those numbers have such a drastic effect on their business and their lives, and that you can spot that and you can be a valuable part of their business growth. But you don't do it for free. You are valuable, and therefore, as a valued advisor, you need to be paid appropriately. So gone are the days where we think, okay, we'll charge by the hour and maybe we'll charge £150 for doing something. If you've just saved somebody £150,000 in interest on their mortgage, don't you think it's a little bit worth more than £150? That's value, isn't it? Thinking a bit bigger is important. So does anybody have any questions or anything that you would like me to expand on? So Fiona's asked, do we start with free articles that give general advice and then charge for tailored to their situation? Is that how we make it chargeable? Yeah, I think the thing is, I think when you send out, rather than sending out an article, I think you just send out a short comment that opens people's minds to an idea. And then the action is that they need to come and ask you for help. And I would always suggest that what you say to somebody is, if this is going to be a very sort of a 10-minute, not complex thing, happy to just deal with it straight away. But if I find from what we've talked about that I need to think about this a little bit more because of your unique situation, and everybody has a unique situation, or maybe because there are tax rules I need to check or anything else, then I will need to charge for that. Okay. Paul, you've put your hand up. Do you want to put your mic on or ask a question? Okay. No, okay. Fozia, do we do free scope meetings and then give charges for different options? Again, it depends, I guess, on what what you want to, what the sort of things you're doing as far as giving advice. I think there are certain things where actually there are multiple options of what they could do. That doesn't, and so the initial advice is about, okay, I've looked into your situation, and from what I can see, there may be 3 options of things you can do. And you can give them the pros and cons of each action. And I think that that should have a fee because you've done that research for them. I think then if they choose to act on one of those pieces of advice, that's the second piece of work, if you need to do something. Should I give away things like cash flow forecasting templates to create value for clients, or am I giving too much away for free? Actually, sometimes I think giving away cash flow forecast templates is actually really clever because it's very rare that a client will be able to do it properly. So I would suggest that you can do that. You can give them away. Obviously, you're not going to give them all singing, all dancing template, but maybe a very basic one. But I think it comes with a caveat. So you would probably put on the template, please be aware there are lots of things that could be going on in your business that could affect your cash flow that you may not have thought about. If you would like a numerate outsider to discuss these things with you to make sure that your projections are accurate, then please contact me. I would do something like that. Okay, if a client phones us and asks a question that seems like a 2-minute answer, how do we communicate it to the client that we will be charging for giving the answer? Okay, good question. Well, is it a 2-minute answer because you have 20 years of knowledge? Because you have done hours of CPD and training? Because you keep an idea, because you keep an eye on what's going on in the news? Exactly. That's why it's a 2-minute answer. It's only a 2-minute answer for you. If they went and researched this, they could spend hours on this. So this is again about valuing you and your knowledge. So they may, and I always say to people, don't let people assume it's a 2-minute answer. You want to say to them, look, you know, I could give you an off-the-cuff answer, but it might not be right. I wouldn't want to be giving you bad advice. So I want to go away and check this. I think I know what the answer is, but I don't want to give you bad advice. So let me go and check it out. That may only take me, you know, half an hour. It might not take you any of that because you already know, but it's always good to say to them, look, this is something that actually I've studied a lot of, but it changes all the time. Let me just confirm that the advice I'm going to give you is correct. So let's be careful that way. I have one client who emails me queries regularly about his payslips and NI. It takes me 30 minutes each time to investigate and respond. How do I charge him for this extra time? Great. Okay. So when you charge for payroll, okay, if you are setting a fixed price for payroll, I think you need to be really clear about what's included. Okay. And I think you need to state things like dealing with queries and doing reruns. So I want to say, okay, I will do the payroll based on the information you give me. If you need me to rerun that because you've missed out information, I will do one extra rerun a year, because obviously people make mistakes. But if that happens more than once, I will charge you for that. I would also put in my payroll breakdown of the things I do, I would add an additional service for explaining payslips and NI. This has come up with an AVN member I'm working with at the moment who says that they've got a client who constantly, they just ask their employees to ring him and go, if you don't like your payslip, ring the accountant. And then he's constantly having to explain payslips to the client, to the employee, why has this happened? Why has that happened? Well, that's not included. So if the client wants that service, they pay for it. So I think you need to say to this particular client, look, why are you querying these pay slips? And, you know, if it's them personally, then we need to come up with a better process so you don't have to keep querying me, or you start paying me for that time, because I am only acting on the information you give me. In ultimate, that's all we're doing, aren't we, with payroll? Yeah, I like that. It's almost easier for people to understand the plumber taking 5 minutes to fix a leak and charging for it than an accountant giving 5 minutes advice based on their expertise and a person not seeing this as chargeable. Yeah. It is true, isn't it? And that's because they see the value, don't they? If you've got a leak and you want a plumber to come out, you will pay I had to pay a £60 call out fee to come and fix a leak the other day before he charged me. And I was like, okay, I need you now. There's water pouring out. And so you pay it because there's a value. He's saving me stress. I don't care about the money. He's saving me stress. So, you know, these things we need to remember. That time, money, stress. What are we doing? We're reassuring people. You know, we're helping them make best decisions. So yes, we do need to think about how we value ourselves and our time. Any suggestions on how we might train our team to deliver business advice rather than it always falling on one of the partners? Yeah, Dean, I'd start with actually working with them and letting them understand what a set of accounts mean. To me, it's going through those stages. So first of all, I often feel that it's only when we get to manager partner level that we really understand what a set of accounts means and what it tells us. A lot of them don't. They produce a set of accounts and they know that the accounts agree to the lead schedules. And as far as they're concerned, they've done their job. They don't read them like we do. They don't read them and understand what this means. So first of all, to educate your team to understand what a set of accounts mean, to read the changes, to be able to have a conversation about that. So if I gave somebody a set of accounts and I said, okay, looking at the set of accounts, what would you want to talk to about the client? If they told me what's in sundries, I'd probably go spare, frankly. But, you know, looking at last year's and this year's, what do you want to talk to the client about? What questions would you ask them? And you start with very basic stuff. Okay. Then I would hopefully encourage them to start looking at the software that you've got. If you're using online bookkeeping software, there's a lot of information you can get out there. So give them some information about that. Get them to sit in on meetings with you as well. That's a really perfect way of learning. It's a way of listening and seeing what you do. And ask them to just be looking at what the reaction is of the client. Seeing if they can pick up anything that's happening or is not being said by the client, because that's often as important as what is being said. So sitting in with meetings is really important, shadowing you. And actually having time to have conversations with clients, building a relationship is really important. So I would start with that first. And then eventually, as they get more comfortable having those conversations, having relationships, they'll then start spotting other advice. The other thing is, you know what? Ask them. It's amazing. You know what? I run team days quite regularly where I go and we share the vision of the business and the goals of the business with the team. And then the partners leave. I throw them out for the rest of the day. And I sit and talk to the team. And one of the things I ask them is, what could we do for our clients that we're not doing now? And you wouldn't believe the amount of initiative that comes from your team, the amount of ideas they have of things that could help, the advice they could give, additional services that you could earn money from. It's phenomenal. I have done this lots of times, and every single team I've ever met have come up with at least half a dozen amazing ideas of things that you could do that would earn you money and actually would help the client. So I think it's really important. I am concerned we are now at the end of my time. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email me. My name is Emma, and my email is emma.slack, SLACK, @avn.co.uk. I'm always happy to support people with growing and learning, and helping them move into this arena of valuing what you do and being a great advisor. Thank you so much for your time today, everybody. Hope you have a great day. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye.